Hey guys, it's Ripe again. In today's title story, my homeowner association president trespasses on my property and sues me for putting up a fence in my garden. The title story starts like this. I've been living in the same neighborhood for about 20 years. In that time, I have seen several HOA presidents come and go, each varying in likability and success. One of them was the worst by far, and she seemed to think that being HOA president gave her certain rights over other people. As if suddenly rules did not actually apply to her and she could wander around and do anything she wanted. The biggest of these things would be to trespass on people's properties. At first, she would do it under the guise of official business, claiming that trees needed to be inspected or there was an anonymous complaint about gutters. Anything she could make up in order to go where she wouldn't have normally been allowed to. The reasons for this were not always clear, but many times she was seen trying to peer into windows, so my guess is she was mostly just a nosy person, but harmless. When it came to my land in particular, I started to notice a pattern. I have a passion for gardening, and in my yard I have two separate sections for it. In one, I try and plant some vegetables to varying degrees of success. It's one of the newer hobbies, I'll admit, and there's a bit of a learning curve. The other section is where I grow my flowers, and that's the part I'm much better at. I have a beautiful array of roses and tulips that makes me very happy to tend to and see. I've had many neighbors over the years ask if I would sell them flowers for special occasions, but I always refused. They were never something I wanted to sell or give to other people, just something for myself to enjoy. My husband had his project in the shed and I had my garden. Shortly after the new HOA president started, things in my garden started to seem off. Things from flowers looking walked on to flat out being picked, vegetables uprooted and footprints in the dirt. Of course, there are sometimes animals, but it was clear this was all being done by a person. I wanted to keep an eye out despite my suspicion and found that I was correct. The HOA president kept wandering into my garden and picking things as she pleased. After the third time I saw her, I ended up going to talk to her. I was pretty blunt and just told her that it was not a community garden and it was on my property. She was not allowed to come into my yard or my garden. She especially did not have permission to pick and take what she wanted because nobody was allowed to do something like that. Even my own husband knew better than to go anywhere near them unless I was asking him for help with something. She did not agree with what I told her and instead claimed she had the right to do so. That the garden was part of the HOA and that meant it had to be open to the community. She also told me that as HOA president, she did not need permission to go onto my property, she could just do so at will. I was not gonna let this continue and decided the best course of action was to put up a fence around my garden. This way, nobody could get into it and she would no longer be able to mess around and ruin things. I ended up picking a black iron fence because I felt like it overall fit with the style of my home. Only a day after it was put up, I had the HOA president in my face, screaming that I had no right to keep the garden away from anybody else. That I was clearly violating HOA laws and she was gonna take me to jail. She claimed that when she was finished with me, she was gonna own my garden and my home. I did not mess around and got a lawyer to defend me against the HOA president and her false claims. I was not sure exactly what part of the rules she was claiming I violated since I never got any official letter in the mail or anything like that. Only a lawsuit. This meant we had to prepare for a bunch of different angles that she might have come at us with. The good news was that the rules seemed to be on our side more than hers. When it came to her going on my property without permission, she obviously had no right. It does state in the bylaws that the HOA president has the right to go onto properties to check issues that were raised to them. However, this can only be done with 72-hour notice and the reason for them coming. She had not done any of those things, so that reason for suing us would go out the window. The fence was a little trickier because I found out there was an entire section just on fencing. She might try and claim that the fence was not allowed because it was not approved in advance by the HOA. Reading deeper, we found that if it came to protecting property and not being used as a personal barrier, such as a property line or decor, then it did not require permission. We saw some other things in there, but I mentioned these two specifically because it ended up being what the HOA lawyers tried to use against me in court. The judge ruled that I had done nothing wrong, building my fence on my property and denying the HOA president access to my garden. I had won my case, but I was not done with her yet. I made it sound easy, but the entire process took about a year and a ton of money just to defend myself. I had a strong case to counter-sue her, and I was not gonna just let that go. She had been caught trespassing, stealing property, destroying property, harassing me, and putting me through the emotional distress of a lawsuit. When the HOA had their case destroyed, it was time for me to go on the offensive, and it didn't take long for them to become afraid. I had pictures showing the damage she had done, as well as her claims of having a right to be in the garden. Some of the statements taken directly from her lawsuit against me. That meant she could not turn around and say something else, or she would be arrested for lying in court. I showed off the pictures of the destroyed flowers and stories of how long it took me to grow them. That I had asked her to stop and she refused, harassing me that she could do anything she wanted. Plus talking of the stress of a year-long lawsuit that did not need to happen because she must have known I did not break any rules. I won my countersuit against her and the HOA owed me a chunk of money. Most of it went to my lawyer and the rest was just enough for me to get my garden back on track. About 2 months later she stepped down from her position, after other neighbors threatened to also sue for trespassing. To my knowledge, she was the shortest acting HOA president in my time living in this neighborhood. Like I said before, we had some not likable ones in the past, but she had beat all of them by a long shot. I hope what she did is a lesson to others that want to take the position that they cannot just do anything they want, and if they try, somebody living there is not gonna let them get away with it. And yeah, ripe stars, if you ever had to deal with any crazy homeowner association situations, please let us know in the comments because I would love to hear your story. In addition, if you enjoyed the video so far, please don't forget to like the video because that would help me tremendously. Either way, the next one is another HOA story and it is titled Dad vs HOA. So I'm a little fuzzy on exactly when this was, but for loose context, it's about 2018-ish. So we are living in this little two-story in a subdivision in upstate South Carolina, which my parents still own. My family just had a full run of renovations done on the house, kitchen remodel, new floors, wallpaper removed, new paint on the walls, etc. The folks who painted did an especially good job. Since they were a small local business, they wanted to know if they could put a little sign in our yard for a few days as advertisement. You know, those little plastic type yard signs, nothing big or fancy. My dad was happy to oblige and showed them where to put it to avoid the sprinkler system. Everything's great, but 2 days later a letter arrives in our mailbox. It's from the HOA, Homeowners Association. According to the bylaws, no signage can be placed in a yard for more than 24 hours. We had not been planning to leave it up for more than a few days, maybe a week at most, but to be told that supporting a small business was an eyesore came well out of left field. This is the part where I tell you that my father, despite being a very considerate and respectful man, has something of a problem with authority, especially when that authority is arbitrarily telling him what to do on his own property. First thing he does is pull out his copy of the neighborhood bylaws. He and my mother both look over it and lo and behold, the quoted passage does indeed state that no signage or similar mode of advertisement is to be displayed in a yard for more than 24 hours. Not one to go down quietly, my father took to combing through the applicable section looking for any loophole he could find. And he found it in the word yard. 2 or 3 days after that, one of the ladies who work for the HOA came down to our house to personally ask us to remove the sign. She and my dad stepped out on the front porch and must have been out there for nearly half an hour. I don't think I heard him say anything other than the occasional or yes ma'am until the very end. See, the sign was no longer in our yard, it was in the flower bed. Other parts of the bylaws, even the cited section, distinguished the flower bed as separate from the yard, and since this particular clause mentioned the yard alone, the flower bed must have been fair game. And he told this honestly quite nice woman as much, without so much as knitting his brows or raising his voice. The sign stayed in our flower bed, perhaps out of spite, for nearly another month before we finally took it down. And yeah, ripe stars, that is how you get revenge in an HOA neighborhood. And the next one is titled HOA Goat Story. So I, 30 male, hate cutting grass. I hate it. The sound of the lawnmower makes me wish I could take my ears off like Mr. Potato Head and lock them in a box. It hurts my shoulder. I got injured in high school and it never healed right, and I might be the only person in the world who doesn't like the smell of cut grass and gasoline. This week was the very first week this year that I would need to cut the grass. We live live in a fairly warm state and the HOA is very strict about it. We even got little flags at the front of the yard that the grass is not allowed to get taller than. So the point is, the lawn needs to be mowed. I don't want to do it, my wife cannot, because the last time she mowed a lawn, she tipped into a lake. It just so happens that I know a guy who owns a goat and I offer him 20 bucks to bring it over to eat the grass for me. The goat eats the grass, we keep her away from the neighbor's yards, goat goes home. It was great, way better than mowing. Except now my wife is mad because some of the neighbors saw the goat and think it's hysterical that we had a goat doing yard work for us. She is pissed that I made us look like weird hicks in front of all her friends. I don't care if they think we're a little weird, I'm happy to be laughed at if it means saving myself from the headache-inducing sound of a lawnmower. But now she is making weird comments around the house about getting a horse to carry groceries or a chicken to clean the windows since there's no man in the house who can. I didn't expect her to react so negatively to a goat, but maybe I'm missing something. So, was I an a-hole? And yeah, Ripe Stars, let me know in the comments what you think about this. Do you think that OP is the a-hole for this or not? And Ripe Stars, I would say that OP is definitely not the a-hole for doing this. I would say it's a pretty smart way of handling the issue of not wanting to cut grass. And if the wife is so upset by it, then she can just do it herself. Anyway, the comments on Reddit said, not the a-hole, and your wife is wrong anyway. It's not a hick thing, there are entire businesses built around renting goats for yard care, especially to clear out brush. It's actually quite trendy. Comment number 2, not the a-hole. Also, it's funny how your wife went straight to attacking your masculinity, that's straight up abusive and toxic as hell. Comment number 3, she tipped into a lake? What? Gonna need to elaborate on that one. Anyway, moving on to the subject at hand, having a goat mow your lawn is an absolutely genius move. And I applaud you for it. You had a problem and came up with a solution that evidently works. If your wife doesn't like it, she can do something about it. You are not the a-hole. And now an update to the story, the goat does not violate HOA BS policies. They got strict rules against raising farm animals, but if, say, the HOA president's daughter wants a pony at her birthday party for a few hours, that's a-okay. And here, Ripe Stars, there we have it again, the typical rules for thee but not for me HOA BS. Anyway, let's continue with some revenge stories. The first one starts like this. My neighbor is a proper Christian lady and a huge busybody. She was my friend on Facebook and had been for years because she is also the president of our HOA and shares info on her page, which I liked having access to. A couple of years ago, I was asked to moderate a relatively large Facebook group, so I changed my Facebook name from my legal name to first name middle name, Sally Joe as opposed to Sally Joe Smith. Well, PCL saw me at the park not too long after and asked why I had changed my Facebook name. I did not give her an answer. She asked me no less than 4 times over the following weeks, finally cornering me at the grocery store saying, "Well, are you ever gonna tell me why you changed your Facebook name?" I'd had enough, so I flatly said, "I joined a swingers group and I've started meeting people on Facebook for no strings attached adult fun. I was concerned about someone learning my identity and stalking me, so I decided to remove my last name for security." She blushed a color I'd never seen before and just walked away. It was glorious, and a week later, I noticed we were no longer Facebook friends. And the next one is another satisfying revenge story. So I rent a house with my husband and 2 of our friends. It's a 5-bedroom house. Rent is outrageous in our area, $2,400 for a 1-bedroom apartment. So we found this house for $3,000, not a bad deal while we save up to buy a house. There are other houses in the neighborhood like this, as well as our next door neighbors. Their house is a 5-bedroom house and they have 9 people living in their house. So it's chaos all over there all the time. In our neighborhood we can choose the trash company, so it just so happens that we have the same trash company as the next door neighbors. Our trash company does like us to have the trash out by 7 AM, so we don't always get it out that early though, and that's where the problem started. Most of the time they don't pick up our trash until 11, so obviously as long as the trash is out before trash pickup gets here, they can take our trash. The people next door have 3 trash cans and they are overflowing every single week. They put their trash out the night before, but unfortunately, our neighborhood has raccoons and foxes, so the trash is always getting into, and last time a raccoon got into their trash. It left a mess in our yard and they wouldn't pick it up. I was pretty pissed about it, but I just let it go, cleaned up their trash. I did go and put it back in that trash can and they just sat out front glaring at me while I did that. Here is where this incident started. A couple weeks ago, I didn't get our trash out until almost 9 AM. All 4 of us were sick with the virus and I was on the mend and feeling a little bit better, but I slept in and forgot to put the trash at 7 AM. So I go to put the trash out and my neighbor starts yelling at me saying, "You were supposed to have your trash out by 7 AM. You cannot put your trash out now." I said, "Well, they haven't come yet and pick up the trash because your trash cans are full, so it's not a big deal." He said, "No, that's the rules. Your trash has to be out by 7 AM. If it's not, you cannot get your trash picked up this week." I said I understand that they want the trash out by 7 AM, but they haven't come and picked it up yet, so it doesn't matter. So I went ahead and I just walked inside. I went back to bed and a couple of hours later I get up to see that our trash can was put to the side of the house and they were still full of trash. So that means that someone moved our trash can. Our other neighbor came up to me the next day and said that she saw him put our trash can back. She did not know the situation, so she wasn't going to butt in and tell him not to do that. Our neighbors are also very proud about their last name. They literally have a flag in their front window with their last name, so I called the trash company and I said that I was Mrs. So-and-so and I needed to set up a vacation hold for our upcoming pickup. They said no problem, we won't pick up your trash next week. They legit only asked for the address, no other information. The next week I made sure that our trash was out at 6:45 AM and then I sat and watched for the trash truck and I watched them come past the house. They drove past my neighbor's house, didn't pick up their trash even though their trash was overflowing, picked up ours and the other few people who also have them and left. I know I'm an a-hole for doing this, you don't need to tell me, I may have crossed the line. But the point is, he also crossed the line by touching our cans and moving them and setting foot on our property. And yeah, Ripe Stars, let me know in the comments whether you think OP is the a-hole here and crossed the line, or was the revenge he indulged in completely justified? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, the next one is titled, "More entitled is not possible." I work part-time for a company that rents accessible vans for those people who need it due to being wheelchair-bound. Think Hertz or Enterprise of wheelchair-accessible vans. I have worked off and on with them for 4 years while I am a 40 female. I'm in school for my physician's assistants. I am almost done with school and this job is a small company family-run business and my boss is an awesome boss. She 99% of the time knows that the customer is in the wrong as our calls are recorded. We get some of the most entitled people ever. A little backstory that is relevant and will come into play later. I was in the military and was severely injured while serving my country on a deployment. This injury left me in a medically induced coma for 3 months while my broken back and neck healed, as well as a few holes in my body from shrapnel. It also unfortunately left me wheelchair bound for several months after, as I regained my motor and neurological function. I literally had to teach myself with OT, PT, ST and MT how to eat, speak in full sentences, write, etc. again. So I, out of anybody in my company, know what a great service this is. Now onto my story. It's a call I received last night in the middle of the night. I work the mid-grave shift and I am basically on my own to make decisions, check the customers in and out, give them airport parking locations, help with customer problems and complaints, as well as explain to people who call that we are not a medical transport company. I must get these calls 3 to 4 times a week every night I work. We actually rent the vehicle for someone to drive their loved one, friend or whatever around. We are not open for reservations or anything other than getting the customers into the vehicle. It is basically an on-call position after 6 PM, Monday to Sunday. It says this when you call the recording. So I can sleep, watch TV, whatever, as it is all remote positions. Last night, a lady calls at about 2:30 AM. We will call her Emergency Room Karen. Well, ERK says after I answer the phone call after being woken up, "ERK, were you sleeping? How unprofessional." Me? Excuse me? Ma'am, but I'm an on-call remote position and I'm very much allowed to sleep. ERK, whatever, so I need someone to come pick me up now. Me, knowing right away she thinks we are a transportation company. I'm sorry, but we don't offer that service, and tell her what we do offer. ERK, don't give me that crap. You just don't want to do your job. You need to get someone out here to pick me up at such and such ER now. I got the virus and C. diff, communicable and gross. Me, ma'am, like I said, we don't offer that service. You need to ask the hospital for a number to a non-medical transport. ERK: listen here, you little stupid girl. Get someone here now. Google said you were a non-medical transport and I want someone out to this ER now. This is when she drops the most disgusting statement ever. You don't know what it's like to be in a chair and have issues walking. Now get your ass in gear and get me that right, you stupid idiot. Me, ma'am, I'll be disconnecting this call. Have a good morning. I hang up less than 10 minutes later and she calls back. This time she has found a security officer to help her. Security officer: ma'am, this is Officer J with XYZ Medical Center and ER. This patient says you called her an R, a word that is so messed up, and said she could wheel herself home for all you care. An Abina. Me: sir, no, that's not what went down. I filled him in and told him we record all our phone calls, and as I told her, we don't offer the service she is looking for. SO: well, you need to find her right. This is not our issue. You need to find her right now. Me: actually no, I don't, nor is it my responsibility to do so. He says he's going to call the police on me. I let him know please be my guest and do so. He hands the phone to ERK. ERK: I need a ride now. I told you already, you don't understand what it's like not to be able to get in a regular car and go. I'm disabled and in a wheelchair. At this point, this is the third time she has made this comment. Me: ma'am, first off, we don't offer the service you're looking for. Secondly, you keep making the comment to me like I don't know what it's like to be in a chair. We are on the phone. You have no clue if I'm in a wheelchair or not. Nor do you know if I've ever been in one. Not that I owe you the courtesy of an explanation, but I was in a wheelchair and I was clinically dead more than once. So you go ahead and call the cops. Hell, you could tell Jesus himself to try to tell me to come get you. It will not change the fact that we don't offer the services you need. I hang up and block her from our phone system. About 20 minutes later, a call from an unknown number calls. I think it's her again. But nope, this crazy chick somehow convinced the SO to call the police. The cop asks me what happened. I explain to him the whole story and tell him the calls are all recorded. He is more than welcome to listen to the recording, and he tells me that he won't be necessary and to have a good night. I think this is the end of it, but of course it is not. My boss texted me today to call her, so I do, and she asked what happened with that call last night. I tell her to listen to the recordings. She does, and I have not heard anything else about ERK. This is just a taste of the types of crazy calls I get every night I work. Just some things I didn't mention. In order for someone to get to me, they have to listen to a recording and hit an extension. This crazy Karen actually hit the urgent option that cuts into another call I am on with an actual customer. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.